the greatest things for me growing up as a kid, what I love to do throughout December is to watch underneath the Christmas tree begin to fill up with presents. And if you were anything like me, what I would do is I would always check, and anytime I noticed new gifts wrapped under the Christmas tree, I'd always love to run and check. And I was looking for one in particular thing as I was looking at these gifts. I was looking for that label. We had these stickers that we would put on. The top, it would say to. Underneath, it would say from. And I always wanted to check because I wanted to know who the gift was to because I wanted to know if it was for me. And so I'd always check to see who the present was to, and I'd find the sticker, and if it said me, then I wanted to look down next and see who the gift was from. I always wanted to know, was it a gift for me? Then I cared a lot more, obviously. And who was it from? Why does it matter so much? Knowing who a gift comes from changes the way that we appreciate it, doesn't it? Knowing who something comes from changes the way we care for it, changes the way we value it, changes the way it changes everything about how we see the gift. This is true with our Christmas gifts, but it's true in so many facets of life. Knowing where something comes from changes the way you see it. There's a man in 1962 in Italy. He's cleaning out a friend's basement. And as he's cleaning out this friend's basement, he comes across a rolled up canvas. He opens it up, sees a picture. It's an ugly painting. He thinks it's funny. 1962. He goes home, puts it in a cheap frame they had laying around their house, him and his wife, hangs it on the wall. His wife hates it, complains about it. He thinks it's hilarious, so he keeps it up in his living room. The painting stays there as a joke for decades. There's a picture of the painting I have. Chloe, put that there. See the ugly painting? He thinks it's funny. Wife hates it, wants to get rid of it. So for decades, this picture hangs in their house as like a running joke. Until the man finally, decades later, passes away, leaves his estate to his grown children, and his adult son, who'd been pestering his father for years about that painting, thinking it was more than his father realized, finally takes the painting out of his deceased father's home, gets it to an art appraiser, and starts going through the channels only to find out that this painting is an original Picasso. Gets valued, appraised by this art appraiser at more than $6 million. If this family had realized where this painting came from, I have another picture. Chloe, put up the next one. This is the wife laughing at the ugly painting that she hated. She wanted to get rid of it. If this family realized the value of this painting, if they realized where the painting had come from, don't you think they would have treated the painting a little bit differently? What's interesting to me is a funny, maybe ugly painting viewed as a joke. If they had known where it had come from, it would have become a priceless work of art. One that their family probably would have passed down for generations. Instead, it was a joke. Why? Because they didn't know where it came from, who it came from. My friends, this aspect of life has ramifications in every area for us. Not just at Christmas, not just with paintings, but knowing where the blessings and gifts that you enjoy every day, that you probably take for granted every day, knowing where those things come from completely changes the way that you see them. Your very life, the breath in your lungs, your body, your career, your family, the car that you drive. Everything in your life comes from somewhere. And what we want to do this morning is remember the source, where our gifts come from. Where do the blessings in your life, the daily things that you take for granted, where do they come from? What is the source? James chapter 1 talks a little bit to this, and I want to spend our time looking at this verse together today. Look at verse 17 rather. James chapter 1 verse 17 says, "Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." says every good and perfect gift comes from above. It comes from the Father of light. And we know from John chapter 1 that when we talk about the Father of light, that light is the life of man. He is the Father of life. He's the Father of us. Every good and perfect gift comes from above. And what I want to focus our attention on this morning with the remainder of our time that we have today is how understanding where the things that we use, that we take for granted, that we appreciate, the things we don't appreciate, all of the great blessings, all of the great gifts we have in this life, I want us to remember that they all come from God. And I believe that as we turn our attention to all of the things that God has done for us, that it will help us to better appreciate and to see more clearly all of the things, all of the work that the Lord has done in our lives. So if you don't know where it comes from, you don't appreciate it the way that you should. So here's some ramifications. Once you realize where everything in your life comes from, it changes lots of things in your life. First, I believe it helps us to give credit where credit is due. And we have an issue here sometimes. As I said already several times, sometimes we take things for granted if we don't realize where something really comes from. Sometimes we can take credit for things that we ought not take credit for, or we give credit to others where they don't deserve credit. And today I think it's important for us to give credit where credit is due to our Father who is in heaven. So what does this do for us? It helps us to remember that every gift that you enjoy is from God. Every gift you enjoy is from God. This Christmas season, as you're passing out gifts to your loved ones, as you're buying gifts for your kids or your spouse or your family, whatever it might be, your coworkers, I want you to remember that as you do that, every gift you enjoy ultimately comes from God. Ultimately comes from God. Psalm chapter 24, verse 1 says this, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell in it." What does that mean? That the earth and everything in it is God's. Everything on earth is God's. Why? He created it. Through Jesus, everything has been created. He's created everything that ever has been and ever will be. It's created through Jesus Christ. So every gift that you enjoy this Christmas season is ultimately from God. No matter whose name is on that label, I'm telling you, it's from God. We need to give credit where credit is due. Now, in my family growing up, we never did the Santa Claus thing. So my parents, and I actually got in trouble when I was in kindergarten. I'll tattle on myself here a little bit. When I was in kindergarten, I never believed in Santa Claus because my family didn't do that. That wasn't a thing. And so in kindergarten, my classmates were all talking about Santa and what they got from Santa or what they put on their Santa list. I was like, Santa's not real. And I told all my kindergarten classmates, and my teacher was so mad at me. I had to go to the principal's office because I told my kindergarten class that there was no Santa Claus. I got in a ton of trouble for that. And I'm like, I don't understand. What? It just didn't compute to me. Why did I get in trouble for telling the truth? It doesn't matter. I won't get into that. Crazy. But my parents, they didn't raise me with that because my parents always said, I want credit for this. I worked hard on this gift. I want you to be thankful to me for getting, I don't want Santa to get credit. I get credit for this. And you know what? I've kept that mentality in my home. My boys ought to be grateful to me, right? Really, it's my wife. She buys everything, and I put my name on it, and I get a little credit, but Sarah gets most of it. Give credit where credit is due. But where should we ultimately be giving credit? To the Lord. Because every perfect and good gift comes from above. Everything you feel you've earned is ultimately from God. And this is a little painful for some of us. I think especially as Americans, we are bootstrap kind of people. We have a hard work ethic. We're proud of working hard, working long days, working long hours, and earning. No one gave me anything in this life. I earned it. That is an American mentality. Can I say it's not really true? That everything that you think you've earned in this life has actually been given to you by God? Everything? Even the work ethic that you have, He's given that to you. He's given you the energy you use to work hard. He's given you opportunities. He's opened doors for you. He's given you skills. He's given you talents. That everything that you think you've earned in this life ultimately comes right back to God. And my friends, we need to give credit where credit is due. Some of you this morning are feeling a little self-righteous, or maybe you don't have the Christmas spirit, because you feel like you've done all of this. You've created your life. And I'm just here to tell you this morning that you're ignoring all of the great things that God has done for you. You're ignoring all of His great work in your life. Everything that you think you've earned has been given to you for you to steward in this life by God. And finally, every talent that you every talent you exercise is from God. He's given you the talents that you have. He's given you the skills that you use in your workplace. He's given you the wisdom in your mind. He's given you the desire that drives you. All of those things come right back to God. And what I want us to do today, at the end of our time together, we're going to focus a little bit of time. We're just going to praise and worship Jesus because He is so good to us. And I want us to recognize it this Christmas season. It's not you and me that have done all these things. It's the Lord through us. Praise God. This is a total perspective paradigm shift for some of us. All of it can be traced back to God. So realizing that every good and perfect gift comes from above, it helps us to give credit where credit is due, but it also helps us to give the care that the gift deserves. It helps us to give the care that the gift deserves. Knowing that painting that I talked about in 1962 came from Picasso himself, was an original, it completely changed the way that family cared for the painting. It got a little bit more expensive of a frame. In fact, it's living in a vault right now in a Picasso foundation. It's not even with the family anymore. It's under lock and key, protected. Where it hung on a wall for decades as a joke, it's now in a safe behind lock and key, guarded 24/7. Why? Because now they know where it came from. And when you know where something comes from, it changes the way that you treat it. Here's some ramifications once you know where the source of the gift is, what the source is. If you're taking notes, you write this down if you like to. But once you know where something really comes from, it changes how you value something. When you know where a gift comes from, it changes how you value it. When I know that my wife has given me something, even if it's as small as a candy bar, I value that gift far more than if any of you give me a candy bar. I mean, we can test this theory. I would be happy to. But when it comes from my wife, I love it more because I love my wife more than I love you guys. I'm sorry, she wins. The source changes the value. It changes it for paintings, it changes it for gifts, it changes it for everything. It changes how you value things, and it changes how you care for things. When my kids give me a little note that expresses their love for me, the words may be spelled wrong, the punctuation may be wrong, but I care for that little note, and I hold on to those things. I have file folders full of those things in my desk at home. My study Bible is full of notes from my boys. Why? Because I care for those things. It means a lot to me because of where it came from. And I take better care of those things than I do notes that I write myself. Certainly, I lose those things all the time. But because they come from my kids, I care for them more deeply. I protect them more. It's because of the source. When you know where a gift comes from, it changes the way that you use the gift. If you don't know where something's come from, if you don't know the value, if you don't know who made it or who gave it to you, you probably won't care about how it's used. It gets thrown around, gets mistreated, it gets broken. You don't care that much. But that family heirloom that's been passed down to you from generation to generation, you can trace it all the way back to your great-great-grandparents or whatever it might be. If that thing breaks, if that's misused, if that's misplaced, it's devastating. Why? Because you know where it comes from. My friends, that's how we ought to treat all of the great gifts that the Lord has given us in this life. That once we know, we can trace everything back to God, that He has trusted us with everything we have in this life, all of your money, all of your skills, your home, your friends, your family. Once you know that all of those things come from God, boy, doesn't that change the way that you care for them? Doesn't it change the way that you'll use those things in your life, your skills, your time, your body? It changes everything. I think about it this way. I brought a little prop for myself this morning. When I was 2 years old, my grandpa, who I loved, still love him, he's not with us anymore, he gave me this little stuffed dog when I was 2 years old. Now, he's probably seen better days. His name is Duke, by the way. I named everything Duke when I was a little boy because my grandpa had a brown farm dog named Duke, and so I named everything Duke. Now, this dog, to you, probably means nothing, and that's fair. This dog has zero value. I could sell it for $0. It is worthless. It has no value. It has no use. It literally just takes up space. But I love it. I've kept it for 35 years. I passed it on to my own sons. I named it. I just told you the name of a stuffed animal that I've had. Why does this thing matter to me? Because of who gave it to me. I did my grandpa's funeral a couple years ago. I talked about this dog. I remembered this great gift that my grandpa gave me. And now my sons have it. I took it out of my son's room for today. He's going to take it back later. He loves Duke too. Why does it matter to my sons? Because it comes from their great-grandpa. It's not the item. It's not the monetary value. It has zero monetary value. It has no use, but it means so much. Why? Because of who gave it to me. I'll always love this thing. Probably will fall apart at some point. His little nose is starting to fade. Poor guy. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I took a chunk out of his ear when I was about 5. Thought I was going to be a barber. I didn't cut my own hair, but I did cut Duke's. Turns out it doesn't grow back. It was memories. I remember my grandpa. I cherish the man who gave it to me. And my friends, I cherish so much what Jesus has done for me. I cherish what God has done for me. And it's because of all of what God has done for me that I want to take great care of the gifts that He's given me, the things that He's brought into my life, the people He brings into my life, my own body, my time on earth. It weighs so heavily on me that I only get so much time. One of the greatest gifts that God gives us is the time that we have on this earth. How frivolous so many of us are with this great gift. We should cherish it. We should steward it well. It may mean nothing to anyone else, but the time that God gives us in this life is everything, isn't it? It should change how we value it. It should change how we care for it. It should change how we use it. Our time. There's so many things. There's so many ramifications. It all goes back to God. He saw fit to bring you into this world, to give you all of the great things that He's given you in this life. And my friends, I believe we ought to care for them well. Give credit where credit is due and give care to the gift that it deserves. Finally, I believe that this helps us to give charitably to others. That when we realize, when you have that paradigm shift, that nothing in this life is truly yours, that you have not truly, ultimately built anything that is just yours. It's all been given to you by God. That changes the way that we utilize those things throughout this life, and it changes the way that we bless others, because nothing is ultimately mine. I'm just a steward. I came into this world with nothing, and I will leave this world with nothing. Knowing that helps me to give charitably to the people around me. It's not mine in the first place. And so we give. This is a hallmark of the church, is it not? This is a hallmark of the body of Christ, that we give. We give sacrificially. We just took tithes and offerings a minute ago. Nobody compels us to do that. Why do we give a tenth of everything we have? Because God has blessed us with it in the first place. He's trusting it to us, and we give sacrificially so that others can have. We give. We give because he first gave to us. We love because he first loved us. My friends, when you know where everything in your life comes from, it changes how you treat other people. And here are some ramifications that I think this ought to have in our lives. Some things we ought to know as we steward these great gifts and blessings that God has given us. Something you need to know as you follow Jesus is that the more you give, the more you get in return. And I just right away, right now, before your mind wanders, I am not just talking about money. I'm not saying that the more you give in the offering plate, the more money you will receive. I'm not saying that at all. This has to do with our whole life. This is an entire life perspective. The more that I give of myself, the more that I give of my time, the more that I give of my attention and my talents, and I live sacrificially to lead others closer to Jesus, the more that I get. This is a biblical principle. Now, it does have bearings on our finances. We ought to give to others. We ought to be charitable. We ought to be all of those things, yes. But I don't want you to fall into the wrong gospel message here and come out thinking that if you give more to Red Cross at Walmart, that you're going to get more in your bank account at the end of the week. That's not how this works. Be wise with your funds. The Lord has given you wisdom to use your money well. But part of our money, part of our time, part of our efforts in this world, our talents, part of utilizing those things is to use them sacrificially for others and for the kingdom of heaven. It affects every aspect of our lives. The more that you give, the more you get in return. Where does this come from? Well, part of this comes simply from Jesus himself. If you look at Acts chapter 20, verse 35, Paul is talking to a group here in Acts chapter 20. And he says this, in all things I have shown you that by working hard in this way, he's talking about the conversation he's just had with them, working hard in this way, we must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he himself said, now listen to this, it is more blessed to give than to receive. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Now, what does that mean? It means that you get more of a blessing by giving than by hoarding. You get more of a blessing from God. You get to experience more of the fullness of God, more of what the Lord has intended for you by giving to others sacrificially than by keeping and receiving for yourself and keeping large storerooms in this life that you will never get to take with you. You know what you do get to take with you into eternity? Other people. You know why it's more blessed to give than to receive? Because if you give sacrificially of your whole life, all aspects of your life, for the sake of the kingdom, and you share the gospel with others, and you help other people meet Jesus and come into the kingdom of heaven, you do get to bring them with you. You'll see them in eternity. You won't bring your 401k. You won't bring your huge TV at home. You won't bring the prized possessions that you have. But we do get to meet each other in eternity. It's more blessed to give than to receive. The more that you give sacrificially of all of the aspects of your life, the more you get in return. And now there's another aspect of this that's connected. Now I'm talking first and foremost, just be really clear, that you get more blessing in return. You get to experience more of the presence of God. You get to, giving sacrificially just draws you close to the Lord. You're more dependent on him. It's just the way that it works. But there's another aspect here that we see in Matthew chapter 25, that is that the more generous that you are, the more that you are trusted with. The more generous you are with what you have, the more you are trusted with. Matthew 25, verse 29 says this. Before I get to that verse, just to recap, Jesus gives the parable of the talents. This is where Jesus tells this parable of three people, servants that are trusted with their master's money. And you guys know the story. I'm just going to recap real quick. This is Lance's paraphrased version, okay? Master gives 3 of his servants 3 different amounts of money, leaves for a time, comes back to see what they've done with the money. And again, you guys know the story. The one with 1 he just buried it, did nothing with it, only had 1 to give. The one with 2 invested the money wisely, doubled it, gave him back 4. The one with 5 did the same thing, invested wisely, gave back 10, doubled the money. And as those servants were telling what they did, the master in this parable that Jesus was telling, he said to the one with 2 who doubled his money, he said, to those who are faithful in little will be given much, right? Well done, my good and faithful servant. To those who are faithful in little, they will be given much. Then he receives the 10 from the one he had given 5. You know, the guy with 5, he doubled his investment, brought back 10 to the master. Master said the same thing. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Those who are faithful in little will be given much. And he scolded the one that only brought back 1 because he buried it. He hid it. He hoarded the talent that God had given him. And we see here in Matthew, again, 25, verse 29, this is where this comes in. He says, for everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. Everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. The more the more generous you are with what God trusts you with, the more the Lord will trust you with in return. He does bring more things into your life. If you're faithful with a little money, you're faithful, you steward it well, the Lord will trust you with more. If you're faithful with a little talent that God puts into your life, the Lord will trust you with more. If you're faithful with a little amount of responsibility, a little knowledge, a little whatever it may be, you're faithful with that and you steward it well, the Lord will give you more and more because you've earned his trust. He's trusting you with things. And if we're generous in how we steward the gifts of God, he's going to continue to trust us with more and more and more. This is a biblical principle. Again, I'm not just talking about money. I don't want you guys to walk away and think I'm just trying, it's just money, money, money. That is not it at all. Every aspect of our life works this way. Every aspect. We can't ignore that. And this is true for you as an individual, it's true for your family, and it's true for your church. It's true for us. And this is something that's just been so important to me, this particular aspect of life and kingdom and ministry. And for the past 4 years, I feel like I've been talking about it constantly, at least in the leadership meetings that I have and the pastoral meetings that I have, that we as a church, I believe, and here I'm talking to all of us as Rolla First, I believe that God has a calling on our lives as a church to raise up pastors and missionaries and church leaders and send them out to other churches that are hurting and not in the position that we are. God has been so good to us as a church. And I believe that a major part of our calling as a congregation is to send people out to other places that are struggling and in need of leadership. And we've seen the Lord do that over these past 3 and 4 years. And this is something that I'm going to be talking about more and more and more because I want you to understand the vision that the Lord has given us as we lead the church, that this is just a part of what we're going to continue to do more and more and more of, and we'll see more as time goes on. But this goes all the way back to actually over the past 4 years, we've sent out 3 families to pastor other churches. 3 families from this congregation have gone out to pastor other Assemblies of God churches. And I'll talk about them here in just a minute. And I bring this up to you for a particular reason, because I want us, as we get ready to close our time together today, I want us to do 2 things. One, I want us as individuals to take time at the end of service, and we're going to be so thankful for what God has given us. I want us to give credit where credit is due. But number 2, I want us to be ready to be generous with what God has given us. I want us as a congregation to be ready to be generous. And we're going to start something this year that I would like to continue year after year after year. Next week, we're going to take up a special offering to bless those 3 churches that are pastored by people who have been sent out from this church. I want us to be able to bless those churches every Christmas with a special gift from us. We worked hard to come alongside these families, to help raise them up, to help them in their transitions to their new churches. And I want us as a congregation that they were raised up in to continue to bless them and to continue to encourage them and build that relationship. And so next week at the end of service, we are going to take up a special offering. And I'm telling you now so that you can all come ready, because we are going to practice generosity this Christmas and every Christmas season by blessing these churches. And I believe more churches as people are sent out. And so we have 3 different families that went out. And maybe you're new to Rolla First. We're going to run through a few things that I'm just really, really proud of what God has done. 2021, we had the Fellers. I think we got pictures of everybody. We had Brian and Beverly Feller, who were our kids pastors here for over 10 years. They went out, and now they're pastoring Calvary Assemblies of God Church here in Rolla, actually, on the other side of town. And so we want to encourage and bless them as they pastor that church here in Rolla. As they work with us to reach the lost in Rolla, Missouri. Amen. 2022, we sent out the Holmes family, Doug and Kimberly Holmes. I think this is pretty cool. Doug and Kimberly were here for several years. They went through school ministry. They got credentialed as pastors. We worked together to see where the needs were, and they felt the Lord had called them to Sullivan. We got them connected to the Rock Church. That's an Assemblies of God church in Sullivan, Missouri. Doug quit his job as a teacher, went all in full-time to pastor this small hurting church. And my friends, they're doing a great work there in Sullivan, Missouri. That was in 2022. In 2023, we sent out Sly and Heather First. You guys know them? We miss every single family. Sly and Heather grew up in this church. Sly had been here for over 2 decades, served as a deacon on the deacon ministry, served on the worship team. They answered the call of God on their life, and now they're pastoring in Bell, Missouri, Faith Christian, what is it, Faith Christian Center. I see it now. I knew it was FCC. Sly and Heather went out last year. 3 years in a row, we sent out families from this church to pastor other churches, and I believe we're going to see more and more and more. God has been so good to us, and I want us to continue to bless and be generous with those families that have come from us and are now taking all of what God has done in Rolla First and are blessing other communities with that. Are you guys with me? Amen. Yeah, give it up for the Lord, what he has done. Praise the Lord. Worship team, will you help me close this thing out? Now, that's 3 years in a row we sent out one family to pastor another church. I think that's super cool. And if you're wondering, well, hey, what happened in 2024? We still had cool stuff happen in 2024. It's just not quite the same thing. We had, I don't know if you know Gannon, but Gannon was a youth, grew up in the church here. Jamie, his mom, is still a big part of the church here. But Gannon became a youth pastor, so he actually moved into pastoral ministry in 2024 as well. So really, the past 4 years, we've had somebody from the church, from this congregation, move into pastoral ministry at another church each of the past 4 years, and I want to see that continue. And I believe that as we give generously, not just money, but we give of ourselves, we give the best of what we have. These people, these families are valuable people. But we give to the ministry, we give to the kingdom the very best, and we are excited to do it. It's sad every time you see a family leave, but it is a blessing to know that they are serving the kingdom, building it up where the Lord sends them, and that we continue to grow and grow and grow toward this mission of equipping and sending out. And I'm really excited next week to give this offering to those pastors and those churches and just love on them and encourage them in the ministry that God has called them to. But today, so that's for next week. I want to give you 4 warnings so I don't surprise you. Come ready. Pray about what the Lord lays on your heart. Let's be generous this Christmas season. Let's bless those families. Let's bless those churches. But today I want you to stand with me. We're going to take time at the end of this service. We're going to thank the Lord. So that's next week. The offering is next week. We'll get to that. You've been forewarned. Today, let's worship Jesus for what he has done for us. Let's be thankful for the great gifts, the great blessings, the time, the family, the memories he's given us, the skills, the talents. All that you have comes from the Lord. Aren't you thankful for that this morning? He's been so good to us. He is so faithful. Let's worship Jesus. Let's give him credit today. Let's pour out our praise to him, and let's keep our focus where it needs to be this Christmas season. He is so good to us. Let's worship.
And I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me. With all my